Hello, this is Leah Whitehorse from Astrology with the cosmic forecast for December 2014. I'm a little bit croaky and my eyes are probably looking really red because I have a streaming cold. So I'm going to be diligently editing out my sneezes and coughs through this video. But anyway, on to the cosmic forecast. So we begin the month with Mars moving into Aquarius, and that's going to be on the 4th of December. And this really motivates you to break free of your limitations. This is a drive for freedom, and basically with Mars having come out of Sagittarius, which is a very adventurous sign, maybe you're kind of feeling like you want to free up time in order to devote some time and energy to these new things that have recently grabbed your attention. When Mars is in Aquarius, it can be quite invigorating, and Aquarius is an air sign, so it tends to get quite restless when Mars is passing through this sign. Maybe you want to be on the move, or you want to talk, or you want to share experiences, meet up with friends or groups. Maybe you want to call a meeting to discuss tactics or ideas. It is the perfect time for a social media campaign as well. And anything that involves team projects and group efforts or group events, all of these things work really well under Mars in Aquarius. The challenge with Mars in Aquarius is that it can generate a little bit of a rebellious feeling sometimes. So you may come up against kind of my way or the highway type of attitudes. Now, the trick really is to just breathe deeply, step back, get some distance, get some perspective if these kinds of situations are bothering you. The problem with Mars in Aquarius is sometimes if you think Mars is quite a fiery planet, and if you put air on a fire, if you blow on a fire, it tends to inflame, it tends to make it burn brighter. So if there is any sort of danger of confrontation, back off, take a deep breath, and just wait for that feeling to pass. If you have the urge, though, to try something different, if you just want to experiment, see what works, try it out, because you're never going to know otherwise, and it can do wonders for your confidence to just try something new. The full moon in Gemini continues with this airy vibe, and that happens on the 6th of December. But there is a little bit of a caution around the symbolism that's contained within this full moon. The moon is going to be opposite Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of this lunation, and also the moon will be square to Chiron. So there is a strong message here about choosing your words carefully. With Mercury in the sign of its detriment and also square to Chiron, what we say to each other and also what we say to ourselves is all called into question. The full moon by its nature does heighten emotions. It's a culmination point, and sometimes it's a crisis point. So the caution here is that with these heightened emotions, there's a danger that they can spill out as words that can't be taken back. With Mercury in Sagittarius, sometimes that sign can be a little bit blunt, a little bit tactless. It's speaking without thinking. And even though we have this old rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. This isn't true. Names can, and words can be very, very powerful. Words can be very, very hurtful. They have the power to do significant damage. The Sabian symbol for this lunation is two Dutch children talking to each other, exchanging their knowledge. So firstly, my first thought was, the question here is, do you speak my language? Do you speak my language? Do you understand? Conflicts arise when we don't understand each other. And inner conflicts arise also when we don't understand ourselves. So really, there is something here about learning to listen, to really listen, to strain to hear the real message that's being said. It may feel like someone is speaking double Dutch to you, but If that's the case, then ask for a translation, ask for clarity, check in whether you really did understand what the other person just said. This Sabian is about knowledge, so the more you embrace someone else's point of view, the easier it becomes to get to a place of understanding. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree, because we don't always agree with each other, but it can help you to develop your own viewpoint. Now, also, I mentioned before, this is about looking at how you speak to yourself as well. Those internal voices. Do you tell yourself that you're too fat, too thin, too stupid, too ugly, too lazy? Do you berate yourself for not starting something or not finishing something? Do you tell yourself that you're never going to get anywhere and it's never going to get any better and you're unlovable or you're worthless or you're pointless or you're a waste of space? These inner voices can be very powerful. And these are like the cruel words of your evil twin. The shadow self, this is where these voices come from. The shadow self, which sits in the unconscious. So this full moon is about learning to listen, to speak kindly to yourself and to others. The moon is sextile to Uranus, so the more you listen and the more you try to understand, the better you can get a better perspective on what's happening and what's really being said. Jupiter stations retrograde on the 8th of December, which internalizes this need to understand. When Jupiter retrogrades, the focus is on inner instead of outer growth. So for the next 4 months or so, it's time to really examine what you believe about the world and about yourself. There may be events that occur which kind of pushes you to re-examine your views and the way that you see the world. It may prompt you to reflect back on past times and to see how your own personal philosophy changes your perspective. It's also time to reassess what you've been developing and working on in the outside world. So sometimes when Jupiter goes backwards, it can feel like there's a halt or a pause in your plans. Anywhere where you've been trying to expand in your life, it feels like it comes to a stop. Now, the purpose of that really is just to allow you time to focus on how effective these plans are, and do they actually match up to where you want to go? Are they developing in the way you anticipated or hoped for? Really, it's a period that helps you to define what exactly it is you want and to check whether your progress in fact is taking you in the direction you want it, whether you might be going in the wrong direction. So Jupiter sort of says, well, okay, let's just stop this for a moment so you've got time to really look at it. Sometimes this transit can bring you down to earth with a bump, and at other times for other people it can be a sense that your optimism that you felt before has suddenly waned, and you can't get your kind of motivation back. If this does occur, just take some time to examine what's going on inside, because your self-questioning and exploration of what's happening without judgment can lead to a sort of finding a really deep sense of inner faith and a renewed sense of fulfillment and gratitude. The big noise of the month comes with the next square between Uranus and Pluto, and that occurs on the 15th of December. This is the 6th of 7 squares that's occurring between these two planets, and it started back in 2012 and will finish next year. So the last time that Uranus and Pluto were square to each other, this was in the 1930s, and that was the time of the Great Depression. There was the stock market crash, And there was also a lot of extreme weather events, which is something that I'm personally interested in, and I've been keeping a bit of a record of whilst this Uranus-Pluto square has been going on. And even as these two have been drawing closer together again, we've just had the record snowfall that occurred in Buffalo in the US. Now, whilst this is a global aspect, it can be personalized in the chart if Uranus and Pluto, or Uranus or Pluto, are touching any of your personal planets, or points such as the angles, the MC, the IC, the descendant or the ascendant. So look to where Uranus and Pluto are traveling in your own charts. Uranus shows what's being stimulated and what's awakening in your life. And it kind of shows what is being shaken up as well, because this is the area where change is needed and necessary. Where Pluto is, this shows where there is a need to transform, and also where you need to eliminate things, people, or situations that are no longer working for you. On a global scale, this aspect is really a force for change. In this case, it's kind of been an unrelenting force. It says things cannot continue the way they have been. It's the collective psychic debris. This is being forced out into the open, and it is a time of radical revelations, revolution, and revisioning. The Sun enters Capricorn on the 21st of December, and this of course marks the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. And much like the Christian festival is marking the birth of the Son of God, the winter solstice celebrates the rebirth of the sun. This is all about the light. They say Jesus is the light, and the winter solstice is about the rebirth of the light, the renewal of light. This is the light at the end of the tunnel after the long dark winter. After this date, the days are going to start to get longer. Light is returning. So this is a wonderful time of year to plant a seed of intention in your mind about what it is you would like to see growing with this light. What do you want to see manifesting in spring next year? What would you like to see flowering in your life? The Sun entering Capricorn shines a light on what you really want to manifest. So make a wish. The new moon in Capricorn on the 22nd of December kind of feels out on a limb slightly, because it's just got a very wide conjunction to Mercury and a very wide trine to Jupiter. But saying that, there is still a very strong emphasis on this sign, because we've got the Sun and the Moon, Mercury, Venus and Pluto all now together in Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of tradition, and during the festive season many of us will be following certain traditional ways or patterns of celebration. Many people will be gathering together with their families or their loved ones. The young and the old are exchanging stories. There's the sharing of food and also gifts. The Sabian symbol for this new moon is an Indian chief, claims power from the assembled tribe. Now, they do say that the people we spend the most time with are a reflection of our personality, a reflection of ourselves. So your tribe may be your family or your friends, or a little bit of both. With the moon conjunct Mercury and trine to Jupiter, make time just to talk with those you love. This is about quality time together. Quality time together is the foundation of your relationships. With Saturn, the ruler of this moon, squaring Neptune, there is also a little bit of an air of nostalgia with this lunation as well. So maybe there is the ache of missing somebody who is not here this year, or maybe it is just a kind of sadness about how things have changed. Maybe there's a lot of reflecting back on the past. Perhaps things aren't quite as you would wish them to be. But with the moon in practical Capricorn, it's about making the best of what you have. Our families, our tribes aren't always what we want them to be. Release any expectation of how things should be, and that way you can enjoy what's real and present now. Saturn enters Sagittarius on the 23rd of December, which marks a really big cosmic shift in energy. And it is a taste of things to come, because Saturn will revisit Scorpio by retrograde action next year, and then it will move into Sagittarius, where it will stay then for the next couple of years. But for now, we do get a little bit of respite from this Saturn deep, dark journey through Scorpio, because it has been quite an intense time, and we have been asked to face some of our deepest, darkest fears. As Saturn moves into Sagittarius, you start to get a picture of how things may develop in the future, given the work that you've done in the past. Perhaps you know now where it is you want to go and what it is you want to do. Maybe you've become more aware of what's been holding you back in the past. Sagittarius is a sign of mind expansion, so with Saturn entering this sign, there are some big lessons to be learned. On a global scale, the beliefs we hold about ourselves and about each other may be put to the test. Basically, our worldview needs a reality check. Sagittarius also relates to the legal system and moral codes as well. So Saturn is about the rules. So what we believe en masse and what we believe personally creates these rules that we live by. If you feel restricted and unable to get to where you want to go, then it's a time to check in with these underlying beliefs about the situation. Often there are internalized voices telling us what we should do, which clash with what we truly want to do ourselves. Now, this could come from authority figures around you, for example, your parents, but they can also come from the media and the society that we live in as well. Saturn in Sagittarius will help you to shed any outdated ways of thinking and restructure your future vision around your true aims. The trick with Saturn in Sagittarius is to challenge your preconceptions. What you think you know may not be the truth. So study, travel, read, question everything. Listen to what others say about their experience to gain a different perspective, because there is always more to learn, especially when Saturn is the teacher. So this month I'm playing with my new toy, which is the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, which is basically just a recolored deck of the original Rider-Waite, but it makes everything a lot clearer. And the card that came out was the Hierophant, and I have to say I was not at all surprised to see this card, because it very much relates to Saturn in Sagittarius. He's the Hierophant, but he's sometimes called the Pope, sometimes called the High Priest, and he really represents the traditional moral codes and rules around spirituality as well. Sometimes he really stands for indoctrination. So this card really raises the question of whose rules are you living by? Do you feel bound? To certain duties and practices just because they've always been done that way? Do you go along with things because you feel like you should? Sometimes the Hierophant comes up when you feel like you're up against a system and you're bound by convention, or you're surrounded by conformist thinking and it becomes quite stifling. It's possible that these traditional values are found within your family, and no more than at Christmas time can these values and beliefs, the differing values and beliefs that we have, they can clash at Christmas because we end up spending more time together. So whilst you may respect that mum or dad or gran or mother-in-law or whoever it is, maybe they have their own way of doing things and you respect that, sometimes it can be difficult if you're expected to do the same. The Hierophant does relate to the sign Taurus in astrology, and therefore he can be extremely stubborn and resistant to change. So sometimes you do have to kind of decide how much it's worth resisting other people's kind of expectations. Sometimes it's just a case of going along with things to generate some of the peace and goodwill that we like to experience around this time of year. On the plus side though, the Hierophant does really represent the wisdom of the ages. It's knowledge that's being passed down from generation to generation. Sometimes it does help to have an established way of doing things, and sometimes you just have to learn the rules before you break the rules. Perhaps you have a faith or a particular religious path or system of belief that really gives you a sense of stability. That can come up with this card as well. Maybe you need to bring your spirituality more into your daily life. Sometimes the Hierophant can represent making your practice more formal, and actually putting it into practice as well. So for example, through setting a prayer time every day or a meditation time every day, or doing rituals, for example. Also, if you've been questioning your path and not really quite knowing where you're going, it's a card to indicate it can be good to ask somebody who is on a spiritual path of some kind. This card can represent a mentor or a spiritual advisor, a tarot reader, an astrologer, or it can be your traditional counselor or therapist as well. Just somebody who has the wisdom and the objectivity to help you with your problem or query. So this month, make some time to explore your own belief systems. Embrace those traditions that really speak to you, but also don't be afraid to start your own traditions as well, especially if there have been changes in your family circumstances or relationships this year. Listen to the stories of your elders and seek some stability in the elements of your life that are unchanging, because sometimes the old and the familiar can be of great comfort. I wish you many blessings for the solstice, a very merry festive season, and a brilliant and beautiful new year. And thank you for watching.